And it's 12 o'clock, so we're going to get started. I am delighted to be here with Yoli Maya and for a parent's journey, navigating schools, COVID, and children's mental health. I think before we started, we were like talking about adults' mental health too, with all this parents' mental health, with everything that's going on with the schools. So Yoli's been a regular presenter or has presented here before. There are lots of, check out her offerings. They're a diverse set over the past year and a half. And we're delighted to have her back. And let's get started with we're not going to have a lot of slides today, but I'm just going to do the introductory slides, the ground rules, kind of ways to engage. You're doing it. The chat is the primary way to engage. Look at, hello, Lawan and Veronica and Emily. A lot of people here today, and they look ready to talk. So the chat is the primary way to engage. But if you want to say something, you want to be heard and actually talk, you can raise your hand, and then Andrew, who's in the back room, thank you, Andrew, and it's Andrew's birthday today, so shout out, happy birthday to Andrew. You can raise your hand, he will unmute you, and then you can unmute yourself, and you'll be able to speak. So that's the ways to engage. And then if you agree to these agreements, I'll just let you read them there. This is in service of us creating a safe space together. If you are in agreement with these agreements, just type in I agree in the chat, like Yamuna did. And wait, Yamuna, you got to put it to everyone. I forgot to say that part, but you need to address your comments to everyone, or else people won't be able to see. Awesome. Okay, it looks like we've got a lot of people very interested in this topic today, Yoli. So we'll take off the slideshow and just Yoli's going to talk.
Let's go. So friends, so excited to be back here in this space. Can you believe, Katthe, how long the webinars have been happening? And which lets us know that, since all of you have come today, that lets us know that these are still needed, right? Our topics are needed. These conversations are needed. I've shown up with a few of my hats on. My hat as a healer and educator, a yoga therapist. We've talked through fear and grief. We've talked through rest and healing. We've talked through ancestral, transformation and epigenetics. We've talked PTA. The last time I was here was with my double PTA hat on. And I'm really excited to come here today just as a parent. And yes, I'm still going to draw from those areas of knowledge, but I'm so excited to not present to you a PowerPoint, some expertise, some data points, some things like this, because first and foremost, that stuff is out there. And also the people who do that for a living, like they should come and give those data point presentations to you. I think the conversation that we really need to be having at this critical juncture here is as parents. And I can say that I'm going to make so many I-centered statements today. So hopefully this is going to be restorative. So again, thank you all for coming and just allowing me to tell part of my story and process a little with y'all and, have some discussion. So this is really a great opportunity for also your voices to be heard and for you to also speak, in resonance with some of the things that I'm going to muse around about. As a parent, I am parenting a almost 10-year-old. He'll be 10 years old at the end of this month. We are in 4th grade. We are in the first suburb north of Chicago, Evanston, Illinois. And this is School District 65. And in School District 65, we have, I believe, 18 school sites in all. And including our elementary and middle schools. So that's one school district for a town of about 130,000 people. We are in a very unique program, the only magnet program in our school district that is called ACC, African-Centered Curriculum. And what happens in the ACC program is the centering of the African and African-American, so African diasporic and African-American experience, perspective, scholasticism, expertise. That is what is centered, as well as educational pedagogy that supports, in particular, Black students in this moment in time, in culturally relevant ways. So there's lots to unpack in that webinar on that one day. But that's to say that, so our experience during the pandemic, I think, is unique because we're in a cohort program. I'm with almost the same families that my son started with since kindergarten. And we also have the strength of the pedagogy of the program. We have the strength of the ethics of the program to really lean into during this very taxing time. Now, that's to say, okay, that's the lane we're in, but we're within the construct of our school district and the folks that are in the leadership positions of that, and the decisions that they make and how things have played out during this time. So that's just the school dimension. If our topic today is also addressing just our children's mental health, there's more to our youth's experience than just what happens in school. But one of the points that I've come to is children in school is the linchpin. And I mean the linchpin of our economy, the linchpin of our society. We live in an industrialist economy. It has been designed around the workaday rhythms of adults. Because one of the things that we did when we created, I don't know, I wasn't alive then, and I would have probably made something different. But when they made the system back in the day, we're talking about first wave, early 1800s, second wave for us here in America is going to be post-Civil War, late 1800s, we're going to get this other wave in the progressive era. So by the time we're at like the 1900s version, we definitely knew that child labor was wrong and these people should be in school and get them out of factories. And so the model that we're in is, okay, adults need to be able to work in the workaday schedule, which means children have to be somewhere, right? If they're not labor, then they got to be in school, right? They need to be in a space. And okay, we're cultivating them for society. We're growing in citizenship. This is kind of the theory of these things, right? Well, we're still in that model. Nothing about that model has changed. And so just to finish this one thought, so that if the children are not in school, the whole thing is hijacked, like the whole design. And so here we are, like dragging in the mud here. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of hiking in a muddy place. I'm thinking of like one time I went to visit some friends that were doing an intentional community in Costa Rica, and we had to walk through this just like 2 feet of mud. The mud was so thick that your feet would pull out of the boots. As you took a step, because the mud would just grip the boots. That's how it feels to be parenting in this pandemic, and then at times I'm being asked to sprint through this sticky mud. And I'm trying to figure out, how am I supposed to do all this? How am I supposed to make all these choices? How am I supposed to make the best choices that I possibly can make when also my support system as a parent is, I'm separated from my support system. I'm isolated in my own home. And no, Zoom meetups and coffee chats, it isn't cutting it now. That was cool back in like lockdown in 2020. But here we are as this goes on and on and on and on and on. And no, that's not enough support. That's not helping me be able to show up. Katthe, did you have something you want to interject, or shall I just continue to flow?
Well, you can continue to flow. I was just gonna, the only thing I was interjecting is that it's kind of arranged around it from the beginning. It's kind of arranged around parents' work schedules, because it stops at 3 and work days go till 5, so it doesn't even do, in the best of times, it's hard as a working person to accommodate the school versus, and then that just got totally amplified is what, by the pandemic. Yeah.
Absolutely, which is also why we have before school care and after school care. And if you are a working class parent who has a commute, guess what? Your kid could be at the school building for 11 hours straight, from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And wow, like that's a lot of time for an institution, for our kids to be in a brick and mortar building, for, like what is it to have both your education and caretaking? What is it to eat possibly 2.5 meals in that building, right? Your breakfast, snacks, lunch, afternoon snack, after school snack. This is just kind of snacking thing. Don't get me going on that, so, like at some point in time, we need more meals, you know what I mean? And so like, wow, one more meal, like maybe lunch, maybe if it showed up, because supply chain has been disrupted this whole time as well, so I don't want to get too lost in any of these details. I want to kind of keep it at the macro on, there's a design to the system. And what we're seeing is that the system can't hold the load of the moment. So now we've got other layers in there as well. So we were talking just about kind of the economic working class paradigm. And so if our children aren't at school, you can't go to work. And if you're trying to work at home, ha, ha, ha. Also that sideways emoji with the laughing, crying, like, or the squirrely one, or my other favorite one, the upside down face emoji. Just like, I am perpetually living in the upside down face emoji, to be honest with you. So what is being asked of us is beyond the load limit. So putting the healer hat on, what happens when you're pushed past a limit? Well, there'll be a moment of adaptation where maybe your nervous system can continue to grow a little bit, can adapt a little bit more. And I say maybe, right? Then we pushed past the limit so long ago that what this amazing body will continue to do is it will adapt with its survival toolkit. But as I've shared with you in multiple webinars in the past, your survival toolkit is supposed to be a short-term burst. How short? The irony is our sympathetic response, our fight or flight response, is designed to last for about 90 seconds. So the cortisol dumps, the adrenaline starts pumping, you get the superpower, boom, we're going to get in and we're going to get up that cliff, or we're going to get up that tree, or else we're going to be that saber-toothed tiger's dinner. That's it. It was only meant to be short burst. Then we should come back into homeostasis. We should come back into rest and repair, back into parasympathetic response. Well, parasympathetic response, I think I left mine in November 2019, because since then it's so boom pow, it's so like left field, duck and dive, dodge, and or that's if you're able to even access duck and dive. So many of us are in freeze. So many of us are in an exceptional ongoing state of overwhelm. So again, healing perspective, what this body will do is it'll start stuffing it into places. So it'll literally stuff this stress into joint spaces, into organ spaces, into muscle fiber. And then we even have like a cloud storage in the body. Well, it'll start packing it into cloud storage, like let's get it uploaded and we'll deal with it at another time, especially if it's perceived as high stress, trauma, drama, like big stuff. So here we are. What are we doing? We're just like accumulating these tensions and stresses while we're having to continually respond. Well, guess what? That burdened, heavy laden state that we're operating from does not bring about the best decision making. It doesn't bring about the best access of problem solving and planning and execution. So we are handicapped in the truest sense of definition of that word, that we're being asked to perform in a way that the body simply can't. So what's going to start wearing is our own mental health, our own ability to stay calm and cool. And like, when I show up here with healer hat on, what are some of the tools, that I'm sharing? They have to do with essentially de-escalation, temporary de-escalation, and the accessing of restful space. And one of our immediate tools is the breath. So what if we just, for a pause, just took like 5 breaths together, just see what that feels like. I don't care how you breathe. Your breath could be this really shallow thing up here. This breath could go down into your kidneys. It could be in your side body. Let's just pause. Now, the deeper we could get that breath into the belly, the better. But seriously, 5 breaths. And I'm not going to do that like lame counting where somebody says take 5 breaths, but they only give you time for 2. Let's just pause for a second. I've already thrown a lot out there. Let's just see what happens if we take a couple breaths together. And in this taking of the breaths, if you start yawning, if you start tearing, if your mouth starts filling with saliva, if your tummy starts gurgling, those are signs of relaxing, like that parasympathetic response. Sometimes we just need to let the breath out of the mouth, right? Open the jaw, let the breath flow. Sometimes my little man will come at me with something and I'll just be like, I'm either going to blow my top or I'm going to take 5 breaths. Most of the time it's blow the top. I still have 3 more to go. Sometimes sounds come out, sometimes little wiggles. Just let it be a free moment of breath. One more. Oh, that felt good. Thank you all that have popped little things into the chat, just letting us know that this talk is helpful. So I want to bring in another dimension. And that dimension is something I'm observing, especially with my PTA hat. So I'm the president of my son's school PTA. This is the 2nd year that I'm in that role. I took that role on pre-pandemic, I think. No, actually, because I was 2nd grade. So I knew I had volunteered to go ahead and take the role on because I wanted to show a different style of leadership, just a style that brought in a dimension of celebration and joy, of just different cultural values, and boom, the pandemic hit and I turned into a glorified project manager. I make meetings, I track projects, I check in with committees and teams. it's not exactly a place of joy, but it's not. So I've kept on with it. And then there really was no option but to just keep on with it for another year, because I love our school and I love our community. We're Oakton Elementary School, shout out. And I didn't want to see us just go dead in the water, you know? And so I have that perspective of like in one singular school building. I additionally took on a leadership role in our district's PTA council. So that's all the PTAs of those 18 school sites. That's our council. And why I took that on is because we're doing, as I talked in my last webinar, we're doing a really unique community-wide cooperative economics project in the form of one fund initiative, where we are fundraising as a community to go into a single pot to be distributed through a rubric, a formula that addresses historical funding inequities in our schools. And just to put that into perspective, what was the inequity? The difference was $15 per student and $250 per student. One town. So you can imagine, what do the libraries look at the school that gets $250 per student, that has that fundraising capacity? What do their extracurriculars look like? What do their scholarships look like? Like, what does their teacher fund look like? What does their equity work look like? You know, they have the finances to do it, right? So this was real, genuine diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism work in action. I'm all over it. I'm like a cheerleader. And so I saw that my skill set in collaborative work environments had a direct application here in a leadership position. As a BIPOC person, I thought, you know what? This is the right opportunity. Well, doing that in a pandemic, again, we can't meet, we can't read body language, we can't, read emotion in this. There's so much missing in the dimension of us not being able to gather together to do that work, which leads me to this other dimension of my experience that I'm thinking a lot about right now, because if I can use my leadership position to move the needle even a little bit on this issue, I think that's worth it. And what this issue is because of COVID protocols in our town, and I think this is in a lot of places, parents are completely frozen out of the school building. So then the question is, what happens when parents aren't in the school building? Well, I have a front row seat. And what I see is it's a disaster. It's a disaster for parents. It's a disaster for kids. It's a disaster for teachers, admin, and staff. And you wouldn't think that it's just parents can't be in the building. Well, what's the difference between a building that you have a sense of ownership in? You are a community participant. You are a member, right? Versus I drop my kid off outside the door, And so when stuff was starting to erupt in our school with just the teachers being overloaded and too much being asked of them, I kept saying, but there's no parents to help you. There's literally not a room parent with you. There's no volunteers. We're not leveraging the skills that parents have to bring into the space. We're supposed to be partnered in our school spaces, especially in elementary school. Think about your own elementary school experiences. If you're a teacher, administrator, if you're a nonprofit that works in school settings, parent involvement is everything. Now, I think, and this is just a speculation, that, parents are also trouble. And parents during the pandemic, especially parents with disposable incomes and disposable time and lots of opinions, they have inundated school and district leadership with their just haranguing and harassing of all the things and ways that they think things should be. So now we have this secondary crisis of communication where good parents aren't in the building. Like, I get it. Really, I do. Because in the PTA leadership positions I'm in, I receive so many correspondences. I'm just like, are you people serious? Like, it's a PTA. We don't have jurisdiction over, but this thing about not being in the building, I think when we're addressing particularly the behavioral challenges of our children in the schools right now, parents not being in the building is another linchpin. I think it's that significant of a factor. So when teachers got upset at my school this year during the fall and said to parents, you're treating the school like a drop-off center. We need you to get tuned in to what's happening in the building. Okay, that's PTA domain. Like, come on, parents. Let's contact your teachers, get involved, build relationships, send those emails, like send some bagels every once in a while, like do what you can. Those gestures count. Show gratitude, celebrate wins, like, then I had to think, well, you are a glorified drop-off center right now, because I literally drop my kid off. I can't even go in, and so when are we going to be able to move into the space that's needed for parents, for children, for teachers, for admin, for staff, for auxiliary staff, the reading specialists and the special tutors and the school psychiatrist, everybody who's the catch-all right now, who are the teachers that are teaching things that aren't their subjects, it's quite fakakta at the moment with the staffing challenges that are there. Like, when are we going to invite in restorative? When are we going to invite in spaces for healing? I would love to be talking about academic achievement, particularly because at our school right now, we are ranking the lowest in our town for achievement gap of white students and Black and brown students. Our school is almost kind of one third Black, Latino, Latinx, and white. And then within the sort of Black category, we've got Black American, Black African, Black Caribbean. We're like super like that. We got a lot of like Afro Latinx. We got Latinx indigenous, big population, actually. Like, so there's a lot going on when we get into some of the subtext there. But what I can say definitely about our school is it is hardcore working class, which is the hardest hit in this pandemic from the dual pandemics of COVID and systemic racism, the systemic disenfranchisement of the working class people. So how do we get parents back into the building? I really think this needs to be addressed immediately. I think it's an area that if we could figure it out with the COVID policies and comfort levels of things, testing and protocols and the like, that this could be an infusion of positive energy. Now, dovetailing on this, issue number 3. And this is really looping into this other dimension of our talk today, and that is about our children's mental health. So parents are not sufficiently equipped and educated in child development and behavioral management tools for in the home. And it all went to the bin, the garbage, during the pandemic. when I have the chance to talk to teachers, to collect stories, especially if you had during pandemic lockdown, so last year school year, if you had a fourth grader, it was entirely possible that that fourth grader was home alone during the day. And so fourth grade is ages 9 and 10, because parents had to be out working. And so what occurred in this story that I collected from our fifth grade teacher in our African-Centered Curriculum program is that the youth were given telephones, right? So you're going to be in close contact with your kiddo. You're going to have these regular check-ins. You can like help them with their whatever. So now these habits grew. Habits of being able to eat whenever you wanted to, of multitasking, like being online in your classroom, but you're on the phone underneath, of having the freedom to sort of order your day with more autonomy, and nobody really checking your behavior until somebody came home. And so what we're seeing back in the school is this immediate, like, you're asking me to get back in the box? Like, you're literally asking me to put my phone down? You're asking me to now eat, hydrate, and relieve myself in the bathroom on your schedule? So it's not just factors of the extreme stress, anxiety, fear of death, fear of sickness, like some of these maybe more typical psychological influences that we may say, oh, this is what affected our kids during the pandemic. Yeah, it's also the complete change of rhythms, the isolation, the autonomy. So what it's done, from a development perspective, it has caused certain aspects in our children to accelerate in growth. It has inspired certain aspects in our children's being and psychology to regress. It has also held back certain areas of development. So it's like our kids are stuck in multiple places in time. And again, for me and my perspective, I think the toolkit that's called in here is of restoration, of restorative, of rest and repair. Like our kids need those deep breath breaks as well. I believe what is happening in a very large sense is a call for transformation and adaptation. Except the behemoth system. So y'all remember that cargo ship that got wedged in the Suez Canal last year and then messed up everybody's like shipping lines and shipping lanes, and you saw the images, and this thing is like, here's the canal and the ship is just like sideways, and it got really, really, really wedged in there, and they had to like dig it out and push it out. And Andrew, you given the reference there, right? That's kind of where we're at. We're in such a tight lane, and we're wedged in there so hard that no, we have to like dig that ship out to get it going, for the backlog of ships, the hundreds of ships that are waiting to get through the tiny, tiny canal to get through. And part of that backlog isn't just about loss. What I'm talking about is that the pandemic has also initiated acceleration. So we're all over the map in different time loops. I had a meditative experience yesterday where this is something I've been working on for a hot minute now. I would say like since December. And it's really these themes about, they're still pumping language like, well, we're going to get back to normal when we get back to normal. I am pretty sure normal is way out the window. Like, bye, bye, bye.
Oh, no.
And what normal, what moment in time was something normal, right? To get back to. Okay. And so what I was reflecting on within myself was a process of letting go of that there was a happy place for me as a parent to get back to. And it really was about having a moment of acknowledgement of my own humanity, my own flaws, and that the only way for me to reconnect to my happiness was to let go of somewhere to get back to. Now, all those lived experiences still make me me. I'm not letting go of the highs and lows of my life in my almost 44 years on this earth now. But I kept like trying to be like, okay, if I could just find the happy memory to latch into and then figure out whatever were those qualities and circumstances of that moment. And then I just have to replicate that in the now. But I finally, I swear, last night came to this letting go. And how I know that is because I had that response that I described to you when we took the breaths. I had a deep sigh. My eyes started watering. Then it was like a combination of watering and tears. I felt sadness. I felt release. I felt the spark of creative inspiration. And I felt lighter. And I came out of that meditative process and I kept sort of simmering in it, and it came up again in my sleep and my dream space. And I was able to go to the chiropractor today, and there was in that healing space as well, and some creative ideas came through. And what I felt in today, in this moment, in this present moment, was that I could access a little bit of my creative bandwidth. And that's me. I was like, that's me. I found a little piece of me in all of this. And gripe number 4 in this whole thing, I feel like parents have been left out to just dry or flail in the wind. I feel like we're the last consideration during this whole pandemic. We're just expected to respond. Oh, okay. Our school district decided that, our school was going to start today, right? We were going to try to start last week, like all the other crazy people who tried to start last week. Yeah, our break also started on the 24th of December, which made, like, if you do Christmas, that made it real, like, kind of hectic and weird and squeezy, But the trade-off was that, let's say from New Year's to today, 10 days quarantine, right? 10 days for everything to pop up. I understood the logic. That worked for me, like, whatever. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not going to act like I'm an infectious disease doctor. I'm not going to act like I work at the CDC, that's somebody else's expert job. So I understood the logic. And then came the directive, hey, first day of school today, it's going to be remote school. I'm like, why do they think that I can just turn on a dime? I'm that cargo ship still stuck in the dang canal. Like, why? They're like, turn your ship. And I'm like, I can't. They're like, no, you have to turn your ship. I'm like, no. I am literally stuck in a sandbank. I can't turn the ship. I can't maneuver. Well, guess what? You're going to have to. And here we are back at this paradigm of, great, now my body has to adapt, respond, and there's nothing in the battery. There's nothing to give to you, So, like, did homie have the charger for his computer? No. Did we make it to remote school today? No. Hands thrown up. Like, so And our school district, at least, is still, touch wood and all things sacred, we're supposed to be in school tomorrow. We're supposed to be, I call it butts and seats, right? It's supposed to be butts and seats tomorrow. Okay. You know what? I'll believe it when I see it. You know? Because that's a coping mechanism that I have developed during this pandemic. No, I'm not going to get my hopes up. I'll believe it when I see it. When you go in and then you actually go in the door when I do my drop off to the drop off center called my son's school, right? And so, like, why? I don't even know if our government has considered the dimension of the parents. But I know my school district, as hard as they are working, and I believe in the leadership of my school district. I'm behind the leadership of my school district as a parent and also as PTA leadership. I believe we have good leadership in place, and I believe they make good choices. At the same time, this stuff is flawed because as a parent, I am left last. No consideration is made for me and the dimension of my experience. And I don't think it needs to be like that. I think we can include the parental experience. So a habit that like my school district has is if it's going to send a like bomb drop email, it will show up in the inbox 4 p.m. Friday. I mean, it's kind of genius, because everybody's out. Check you Monday. You can send all your irate emails, make all your phone calls, fill up somebody's inbox. Nope. There's no office you can walk into. You can't drop in on anybody. Nobody's going to answer you. And then 48 hours later, you're going to be in a slightly different place with stuff, or you will have, stewed over the weekend with your other parent friends, commiserating and complaining, until Monday happens. And then guess what? So we as parents need to feel seen and heard in the mix. Now, let us not exclude the dimension of diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, and anti-racism. Let us not forget that there are parents, I can say in my community especially, who take up more bandwidth than others in the complaining, the hounding of the school board, the harassing of the superintendent and the cabinet. Whereas I see at my school, working class parents, immigrant parents, families who English is not the first language, families whose immigration status is not settled and confirmed. We have lots of undocumented families at our school. And they don't have the same experience of parent advocacy. They don't know how to advocate for their youth and what they're generally advocating for. No, they're not like about masks and HEPA filters. They're talking about serious issues around their children's mental health, physical health, and the fact that they don't know how to access support services. And now let's talk about how those services are so beyond capacity. Mental health services, if you needed to get into a social worker, a psychiatrist, a licensed clinical social worker, a clinical psychologist, before the pandemic, I know because one of my clinics that I work in I'm in a psychotherapy practice. So we're psychotherapy and wellness. I'm part of the wellness team. What I learned at some of our staff meetings is, and this was pre-pandemic, so we're talking about in 2019, that in our area, we were one of the only practices that was still accepting new patients. And anything that took Medicaid, state aid, was maxed beyond the max, that they weren't even entertaining a wait list anymore because the wait list was never being addressed. That was how far the system was maxed. So if you are someone who is receiving your healthcare down the ladder, I am one of these people who receives their healthcare through, state aid, that like, if you needed those mental health services, forget about it. Like, seriously, just forget about it. You were not going to be able to access them. So what has happened now in the pandemic? Yes, there's been the telehealth shift, but there has been a flood. And when you talk with social workers, some of you on this call I know you are in this field. That's why you showed up for this call, right? That the tidal wave that's pending hasn't even hit yet. I'm not talking about COVID numbers, isn't that? We're just talking about mental health and to be able to access services. So if we were maxed pre-pandemic, and we are really maxed in mental health services ongoing pandemic, and the tidal wave hasn't even hit, I do not need to be a mathematician to figure out that we won't have the tools to give to the people in crisis. Where does that leave us? It's the open-ended question. What are we going to do? So, personal touch points for this. My son's pediatrician, we saw her last week. We both agreed, wow, gosh, it would be so nice if he could have somebody to talk to. And she was just like, I don't know where you would go. I have nowhere I could send you. You could try the grad school students at the local university. And I'm like, wow. Hey, maybe we'll get a good one. I don't know. Like, wow, that's where we're at. Another touch point was board. We had a check-in with some board members for an organization named Yoga Care, and we create accessible yoga in healthcare settings on the south and west sides of Chicago. One of our board members works for Lurie Children's, and we were talking about families being able to access mental health services for their children. She said they're so maxed out at Lurie. It's so beyond the max. The wait list, you just simply won't get in. She said the inpatient facility is beyond capacity. So if you have a child that really needs inpatient services, it's not there to be had. So here we are at the critical storyline of this whole dual pandemic, that if you are part of the population of the haves, you're fine. You can get in. You can find your services because you can pay for them. And for those of us who cannot pay $150 to $250 per session to get our children into mental health services, I guess we're just SOL. That's it. So here's my prediction. With the parent hat on and the PTA hat on and the history teacher hat on and the comparative religions teacher hat on, the healer hat on and this hat on, I'll tell you what's going to happen. The bottom will fall out. We live in a society that is a pyramidal structure. The structure of capitalist society is pyramidal. The top is held up by the bottom. And if the bottom falls out, I don't know what happens to the rest of the thing. And so I start to wonder, are we just simply on a course of inevitability here? Are we participating in just the demise of something right now? And does it really need to be this way? Aren't there alternatives? Can't we be exploring? Can't we be innovating? Can't we take the scales and make them smaller? But here we are if you're in the Chicagoland area, if you're in Chicago itself, and you see what is happening between the age-old Hatfield and McCoys right now, called the City of Chicago and the Chicago Teachers Union. Now this is just armchair. I'm like, let me put my armchairs down on here. Just some armchair, thoughts right here. Are what our teachers asking for really that unreasonable? Is it really that unreasonable that in a COVID bloom moment that they would just do remote school until they can, within probably just a matter of weeks, get back into the building? But this whole rhetoric, like the teachers and the admin don't care about our students. They don't understand. They have to get back to the building. I'm pretty sure our teachers care about our students. They, in fact, care a lot. But teachers did not sign up to be hazard workers. I do, in my humble personal opinion, think it is unfair to ask that of them. And there was a comment here in the chat a little bit earlier from Adrian, I'm guessing. Teachers are not equipped to navigate through the trauma that the children are experiencing without the support of parents. It's impossible. As a parent, I need to know from that child development perspective what's actually happening. And then from the perspective of the pandemic, some things are accelerated, some things have regressed, some things that should be happening are held back, and then it's all just a bit fakakta, right? And then I need to understand, I need some behavioral management tools beyond just my regular old inherited toolkit, which is probably not very helpful, And then on top of that, I need to understand how behavior management happens in the school. And then I need to be partnered with my teachers and admin to build bridges. So when we were just meeting up at the start of this webinar, we're like, what's going to be the big message, from this? And I said, let's make the message deep breaths. Like literally, let's leave a singular tool that is actually accessible, and boom, deep breaths. And I don't mean that in like a Band-Aid or just, glance over it like it's not important. No, I really do think taking deep breaths can be helpful. But I think if there was going to be another message out of this, it is about building bridges. And right now, I just see us torching the bridges. It's pyrotechnics all over the place. And maybe with a few deep breaths, we could transform out of fight or flight, and we could come into the problem-solving space as partners, as co-collaborators. I don't think we've tried that yet. So why don't we try it and then decide if it'll fail or not? But don't tell me it's going to fail before we ever try it. Because I can say, as a parent in this pandemic, we haven't even tried it. So there's a couple minutes here. I'd love to hear just even something that was helpful for you from this talk, or any questions or ponderings. Katthe, you've listened, if there's something that's resonating for you.
Well, what's resonating for me is just some of what you're saying it feels like it's the same thing that we've been saying for 30 years in terms of bridges, in terms of parents' participation in schools, and that it's been brought into focus or exacerbated or amplified the problem, but that it's really business as usual. Same thing with lack of mental health services or full beds in inpatient, and really rotten options for most people. If your kid needs inpatient services, I guess that's, and then the other thing is that when you were saying in terms of the adaptation, I think that's also really interesting in terms of what kids need to do, what kids being more independent, at home and having their own rhythms and their own schedules, and then the school not being able to meet them where they are, wanting to put them back in the box. So Jennifer says kids going back to school and having to get used to the school timeline again. I feel the same way. Going back to work really put what I was feeling into words. Yeah, and that's what I was thinking also, is just having the schools be child-centered instead of teacher-centered in a certain way, which is, I think, a lot. Or when you were talking about the industrial model, like so much of the school rhythm was about preparing children for factory work, and so having the bells ring and, that was very intentional, having bells to signal changing of classes and, the do what you're told, the hierarchical thing. So I guess the school reform issues, I guess from the parents' perspective, my question for you is really about how is it, the bottom falling out is one thing that's, you're saying is going to happen, but I guess, and deep breaths are another kind of solution. Is there anything between deep breaths and the bottom falling out?
Katthe, this is what I pray on. I don't want to live through the bottom falling out. I don't want that inevitability to come into being. And so I really do think that part of the mitigation of that rests in our cultivation on an individual plane of our ability to de-escalate, to come into rest and repair. Because if we stay in this level of hysteria, then I think it feeds the inevitabilities. Because the same people are going to still keep making the same decisions. Those decisions are about the accumulation of wealth.
Yeah.
And it's not about the accumulation of wealth for those who don't have it. It's for the accumulation of wealth for those who already do.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that our ways through, not forward, but through, are these deep principles of mutual aid,
I was going to say
cooperative economics, of community-led,
mm-hmm.
that sort of sentiment.
Now, and sharing with each other our technique, like when you talk about parents being overwhelmed with behavior management technique, there are parents who know something about that. It's not all about professionals. It's all about making the appointment with the expert. It's sometimes about us sharing with each other what we know, and also being there for each other, to what people have done in community forever, being there to listen, being there to say, yes, that's really hard to witness,
And 100% agree, Katthe. And as much as I know Be Strong families, that's what Be Strong reps, and I think we have, I think we're living out what happens when you hand over everything to experts and you do not allow parents to be expert. Something that I say a lot in the context of healing, because a lot of people I work with have chronic conditions, autoimmune, like really important things like this. I say, you are the most expert person about your body. There is no doctor who knows more about your body than you do. And sometimes that takes people a while, if not forever, to really ponder. But the scan is I can't see my liver, like the scan. And no. You live in that body. You feel the sensations of that body. Why on earth can parents not be experts?
Well, we could go on and on. I have a great story about that, but we're at the end of our time.
We're at the end of our time, and I have thoroughly enjoyed these musings with you all today. I trust that this was a rich conversation for you as well.
Well, thank you so much, Yoli, for being here. Really appreciate you, and a lot of love in the chat also. Let's go, Andrew. What's the next webinar? Well, tomorrow, living the protective factors in Spanish. And then on Wednesday, we're going to continue our schools theme with violence in schools and community. How are parents managing the fear and anxiety? And this is with Sarita and two of our board members from Be Strong Families, who, when I was talking to them prior to the break, this was really what was coming up with them, is the fear and anxiety associated with what's happening in their schools and communities. So stay tuned for that one. Big topic, important topic. And Taste of Cafes on Friday, questionable. The game, endless fun. People need fun, right?
Yes.
So, and subscribe on YouTube. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and be safe, as somebody put in the, just many have put in the chat. And we're getting a lot of thank you. Thank you, Yoli. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy to have been an affirming factor.
And I want to tell you I mean, people can leave and everything, but the analogy I was giving is like, I've been having for the last number of months, I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning with a pain on the inside of my leg near the knee, right?
Okay.
I went to the doctor. You know, I'm trying to figure out what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Went to the doctor. They did a vascular scan. Nothing's wrong with the vascular. I went to the orthopedic surgeon. He said, you have arthritis in your knees. Well, of course I have arthritis in my knees, but it doesn't hurt when I walk, and it doesn't hurt during the day. So why am I waking up at 2 in the morning? Like, what's going on? Sometimes the point is not what's asking you what's going on. I'm getting there myself, but the point is, the doctors don't have the answer. Like, they don't have the answer. And they're not even really interested in the question. Like, no one's concerned that I'm waking up at 2 in the morning with this pain. That seems normal to them, like something normal that happens to people who are your age and have arthritis. And I'm like, but no, I don't accept that. I don't want that to be the case. So, you know, like, I'm looking at diet. I'm looking at, you know, liver meridian. I'm looking at, you know, like, my eyes are also like, so that's liver meridian. I'm looking at, like, what can I do? What changes can I make? And last night was the first night in 6 months that I didn't wake up with that. But it wasn't because of Western, it wasn't because of, you know, medicine. It's just like, sometimes the experts don't know or don't care, you know? So anyway, I just wanted to add.
Exactly. Exactly. So what is it when you take that power back, that autonomy? What happens when you center, you know, your own wisdom, your own lived experience, your own ability to make those connections, and then seek out help? I think the same formula for parents, you know, that like, we're not going to do this alone. We need each other. And we need knowledge holders. But I think maybe if we start shifting this from experts to knowledge holders, and the acknowledgement of multiple sources of knowledge.
Right. And that's what I think with the mutual aid or mutual assistance or community, that you have people. I mean, and believe me, I was asking my massage, you know, myofascial release massage therapist and acupuncturist and all that kind of stuff too. But sometimes it's like that combination of your own inner wisdom and what you know you need to do for your body. Like I'm, you know, with diet, with supplements, with, you know, just exercise, different kind of exercise, yoga, you know, like I know,
Yes.
you know. And so I think that's the other messages for parents, is to trust your own wisdom and get out of the noise, the rest and relaxation and recuperation, restoration, to be able to hear your own wisdom, you know.
Yes. I love that final message. Thank you, Katthe.
Thank you.